Have you ever wondered why two people can walk the exact same distance every day, eat similar meals, and yet end up with completely different bodies? One person's waist slowly shrinks, their energy improves, and their blood sugar becomes more stable. The other sees almost no visible change, and eventually concludes that walking simply doesn't work. If you've ever felt frustrated because you walked consistently for weeks without seeing dramatic results, you are not alone. But what if the biggest changes weren't happening where you could see them? What if every single walk was quietly teaching your fat cells to behave differently? Most people think walking is simply a way to burn calories. They imagine that every step immediately melts fat away like ice under the sun. It's an understandable belief because fitness trackers constantly tell us how many calories we've burned. But this way of thinking misses the most fascinating part of what walking actually does inside the human body. Walking is not just a calorie-burning activity. It is a biological conversation. Every step sends signals throughout your muscles, your liver, your pancreas, your blood vessels, your brain, and even your fat tissue. These signals are repeated, day after day, gradually changing how your body manages energy. Instead of forcing fat to disappear overnight, walking slowly teaches your body to become better at using fat as fuel. This is why so many people quit too early. They spend 2 weeks walking every evening, step on the scale, and see little difference. They assume nothing is happening. In reality, their body may already be changing in ways that no mirror can reveal. Their muscles may already be becoming more sensitive to insulin. Their blood vessels may already be delivering oxygen more efficiently. Their liver may already be storing less excess fat. Most importantly, their fat cells may already be receiving completely different biochemical instructions than they did only days earlier. Your fat cells are not lazy blobs sitting under your skin, waiting to be burned away. They are living, active cells that constantly listen to hormonal messages. They decide whether to store energy or release it. They communicate with your brain. They influence inflammation throughout your body. They even affect how hungry you feel after meals. The remarkable part is that walking begins changing these conversations almost immediately. Not because you burned a few extra calories during today's walk, but because your body starts preparing for tomorrow's walk and the next one after that. Those repeated signals gradually reprogram the way your entire metabolism operates. Over the next few minutes, we're going to follow this transformation from the inside, watching how your fat cells slowly change over the first 30 days of consistent walking. Once you understand what's really happening beneath the surface, you'll never think about a simple walk the same way again. To understand how walking can reprogram fat cells, we first have to change the way we think about fat itself. Most people imagine body fat as a simple storage tank, like extra fuel hidden under the skin or packed around the organs. But fat tissue is much more active than that. It is almost like an endocrine organ. It releases chemical messages, responds to hormones, talks to the brain, affects appetite, influences inflammation, and changes the way the body handles energy. There are different types of fat in the body, and they do not behave the same way. White fat is the kind most people think about when they talk about weight gain. Its main job is to store extra energy. When you eat more energy than your body needs, especially when insulin stays high often, white fat cells become larger. At first, this is simply storage. But when these fat cells become too large, they can begin sending out inflammatory signals. They become less flexible, less healthy, and more resistant to normal hormonal control. Then there is brown fat, which behaves almost in the opposite way. Brown fat is rich in mitochondria, the tiny energy-producing structures inside cells. Instead of mainly storing energy, brown fat is better at burning energy and producing heat. Adults do not have huge amounts of brown fat, but the idea is important because it shows that fat tissue is not fixed. Fat can store energy, but under the right conditions, some fat tissue can become more active, more responsive, and more willing to release fuel. Between white fat and brown fat is another fascinating type called beige fat. Beige fat starts out more like white fat, but under certain signals, it begins to behave more like brown fat. It becomes more metabolically active. It uses more energy. It contains more mitochondria. It becomes less like a passive storage locker and more like a living tissue that participates in energy burning. Walking may not magically turn all your white fat into brown fat, But repeated daily walking sends a powerful message to the body. Energy is needed regularly. Your muscles begin asking for fuel. Your blood flow increases. Your cells become more sensitive to insulin. Your mitochondria are encouraged to work more efficiently. Over time, this changes the environment around your fat cells. One of the key signals involved is AMP, which you can think of as one of the body's internal energy sensors. When muscles use energy during walking, AMP activity can rise. This tells the body to improve energy production, increase fat oxidation, and become more efficient at using stored fuel. Another major change happens with GLUT4 transporters. These are like small doors that help move glucose from the blood into the muscles. With regular walking, the muscles become better at pulling glucose out of the bloodstream, which means the body needs less insulin to do the same job. This matters because insulin is one of the main signals that tells fat cells to store energy. When insulin is constantly high, fat cells are more likely to hold on to stored fat. But when walking improves insulin sensitivity, insulin levels do not need to stay elevated as long after meals. The body becomes better at moving fuel into muscle, instead of pushing more and more energy into fat storage. This is the beginning of fat cell reprogramming. The fat cell is not being attacked. It is being given a new set of instructions. Instead of constantly hearing, store more energy, hold on to fat, protect the reserves, it begins hearing, energy is being used, fuel needs to move, become more flexible. That flexibility is one of the biggest signs of metabolic health. And this is why the first days of walking matter, even if the scale does not move. The body is not only counting calories, it is changing signals, improving communication, and slowly teaching fat cells to respond differently. The real magic of walking does not happen during a single workout. It happens through repetition. Every day you walk, your body remembers a little more about what it needs to do the next day. Instead of looking at one walk in isolation, imagine watching a movie and fast forward, where every day adds another small adjustment inside your muscles, liver, blood vessels, and fat tissue. By the end of the first month, these tiny adjustments begin to add up into measurable biological changes. On the very first day, your muscles immediately begin using more glucose than they normally would while sitting still. Muscle contractions activate pathways that allow glucose to enter muscle cells, even without requiring as much insulin. Blood circulation increases, oxygen delivery improves, and the body briefly shifts toward using a slightly greater proportion of stored fat for energy, especially if the walk lasts long enough and is performed at a moderate pace. None of these changes are dramatic enough to transform your appearance, but they represent the first signals that tell your metabolism something new is happening. During days 2 through 5, your body starts responding more efficiently to these repeated signals. Your muscles become better at storing glycogen, which is the body's quick-access form of carbohydrate energy. Because muscles are becoming better glucose users, less glucose remains circulating in the bloodstream after meals. Your pancreas does not have to release quite as much insulin, and insulin levels begin returning to normal more quickly after eating. At the same time, low-grade inflammation inside fat tissue may begin decreasing, allowing fat cells to become slightly more responsive to normal hormonal communication. By the end of the first week, many people notice something interesting that has nothing to do with weight loss. They often report having steadier energy throughout the day. Afternoon fatigue becomes less severe. They feel less sluggish after meals. This happens because blood sugar fluctuations are becoming smoother, and muscles are acting like larger reservoirs for incoming glucose, instead of allowing it to remain in the bloodstream. Although the bathroom scale may barely move, the body's metabolic flexibility is already improving. As the second week begins, deeper cellular adaptations become more noticeable. The mitochondria inside muscle cells become more efficient at producing energy. Your cardiovascular system delivers oxygen more effectively with every heartbeat. Walking at the same pace now feels easier than it did only 10 days earlier, because your muscles are performing the same work while using energy more efficiently. This improved efficiency means your body can increasingly rely on fat oxidation during longer periods of activity, rather than depending almost entirely on carbohydrates. Around the middle of the second week, insulin sensitivity continues improving. Instead of constantly storing incoming calories inside fat cells, your body becomes more willing to direct nutrients toward muscle repair and energy production. Fat cells themselves become more metabolically flexible. They respond more readily when the body requests stored fatty acids to be released between meals or during physical activity. This does not mean fat suddenly disappears overnight. It means the biological barriers that once resisted fat release are slowly becoming weaker. By the third week, another important shift often occurs. Appetite regulation begins changing. Hormones involved in hunger and fullness, including leptin and ghrelin, may start becoming more balanced. Many people notice they are no longer constantly thinking about snacks between meals. Cravings for highly processed sugary foods often become less intense, not because of willpower alone, but because the brain is receiving more stable energy signals. Better blood sugar control leads to fewer sudden energy crashes, which reduces the urge to seek quick sources of sugar. Sleep quality frequently improves during this stage as well. Regular walking helps regulate circadian rhythms, lowers stress hormone levels over time, and promotes deeper restorative sleep. Better sleep further improves insulin sensitivity and appetite regulation, creating a positive feedback loop. One healthy behavior begins reinforcing another, allowing the body to recover more efficiently each night. By the fourth week, many of the invisible biological changes start becoming visible. Some people notice their waistband feels looser, even if their total body weight has changed only slightly. Others find that climbing stairs requires less effort, morning stiffness decreases, and everyday movement feels lighter. Blood pressure may improve, fasting blood glucose may become more stable, and endurance continues increasing. These outward improvements are simply reflections of thousands of microscopic adjustments that have been taking place since the very first walk. What appears to be a simple habit has actually become a month-long biological training program. Every walk has strengthened communication between muscles and fat cells, improved insulin signaling, enhanced mitochondrial function, reduced inflammation, and encouraged your metabolism to rely less on constant sugar burning and more on flexible energy use. The transformation did not happen because one walk burned a large number of calories. It happened because 30 consecutive days of walking taught your body to operate differently at the cellular level. Now that we've followed the timeline of these changes, the next question becomes even more fascinating. What exactly is happening inside each major organ as this transformation unfolds? Each organ responds in its own unique way, and together they create the remarkable improvements people experience after building a consistent walking habit. By now, you can see that walking is not simply changing your fat cells. It is coordinating an entire network of organs that constantly communicate with one another. No organ works alone. When one becomes healthier, it helps the others function better as well. This is why the benefits of consistent walking seem to spread throughout the entire body, instead of staying limited to your legs. Let's begin with the brain. Every step you take increases blood circulation, allowing more oxygen and nutrients to reach brain tissue. Walking also stimulates the release of neurotransmitters, such as dopamine and serotonin, which help regulate motivation, mood, and emotional well-being. Over time, stress hormones like cortisol become easier to control. This matters because chronically elevated cortisol can encourage fat storage around the abdomen. As walking becomes a regular habit, many people notice they are less likely to eat out of stress, boredom, or anxiety. Instead of constantly fighting cravings with willpower alone, the brain gradually becomes better at making healthier decisions because its internal chemistry is becoming more balanced. The liver is one of the biggest winners during this process. The liver constantly decides whether incoming nutrients should be stored, released, or converted into different forms of energy. When insulin sensitivity improves through regular walking, the liver no longer needs to produce as much glucose between meals. Fat accumulation inside liver cells may gradually decrease, especially when walking is combined with a balanced diet. As liver function improves, triglyceride production often falls, blood sugar regulation becomes more stable, and the entire metabolic system operates more efficiently. Your muscles experience some of the most dramatic changes. Every walk encourages muscle fibers to produce more mitochondria, the tiny structures responsible for generating energy. More mitochondria mean greater endurance and improved fat oxidation. Muscle cells also increase the number and efficiency of GLUT4 transporters, allowing glucose to move from the bloodstream into muscle tissue more easily. This reduces the workload placed on insulin and helps prevent prolonged elevations in blood sugar after meals. As muscles become stronger metabolically, they act as powerful energy reservoirs, reducing the likelihood that excess calories will be stored as visceral fat. The pancreas also benefits significantly. This small organ is responsible for producing insulin, one of the body's most important metabolic hormones. When muscles become more sensitive to insulin, the pancreas does not need to work as hard to maintain healthy blood sugar levels. Lower demand means less stress on the insulin-producing beta cells. Over many years, this reduction in workload may help preserve healthier pancreatic function and support long-term metabolic health. Your heart and blood vessels undergo steady improvements as well. With consistent walking, the heart gradually pumps blood more efficiently, allowing it to deliver oxygen throughout the body with less effort. Resting heart rate often declines because each heartbeat becomes more effective. The inner lining of blood vessels, known as the endothelium, responds positively to increased blood flow. Blood vessels become more flexible, circulation improves, and blood pressure may gradually decrease. Better circulation also means fat tissue, muscles, and organs receive oxygen and nutrients more effectively, supporting every other metabolic adaptation taking place. Now we return to the fat tissue itself. Healthy fat cells are surprisingly dynamic. As insulin sensitivity improves and inflammation declines, fat cells become more willing to release stored fatty acids when the body requires additional energy. Instead of remaining locked in storage mode, they become metabolically flexible. The inflammatory chemicals produced by enlarged visceral fat cells gradually decrease, while communication between fat tissue and the rest of the body becomes healthier. Hormones such as leptin, which help regulate appetite and energy balance, begin functioning more effectively. Rather than constantly signaling the brain to seek more food, the body's hunger and fullness systems become more accurate. The immune system quietly participates in this transformation too. Excess visceral fat with closely associated with chronic low-grade inflammation, a condition that silently places stress on nearly every organ. Regular walking helps reduce inflammatory signaling while supporting immune cells that promote tissue repair instead of ongoing inflammation. Oxidative stress decreases, allowing cells to repair themselves more efficiently. Although these improvements are invisible, they create an internal environment that supports healthier aging and lowers the risk of many chronic diseases over time. When all of these organs begin working together more efficiently, the benefits become impossible to attribute to just one system. Better liver function supports healthier blood sugar. Healthier muscles improve insulin sensitivity. Lower inflammation helps fat cells function normally. Improved brain chemistry reduces emotional eating. Stronger circulation nourishes every tissue in the body. Instead of isolated improvements, walking creates a chain reaction in which each healthy adaptation reinforces the next. This is why people who remain consistent often say that after several weeks, walking no longer feels like exercise. It feels like their body is simply working the way it was designed to work. The changes are no longer limited to what they see in the mirror. They begin noticing better energy, clearer thinking, improved sleep, and greater resilience throughout daily life. After about a month of consistent walking, most people stop measuring success by calories burned during a single workout. Instead, they begin noticing dozens of small improvements that make everyday life easier. These changes often appear gradually, making them easy to overlook, but together, they represent one of the strongest signs that your metabolism is becoming healthier. One of the first real-life benefits is improved energy. Instead of relying on repeated caffeine or sugary snacks to stay alert, many people find that their energy remains more stable throughout the day. This happens because their muscles have become better at using both glucose and fat as fuel. Blood sugar no longer rises and crashes as dramatically, reducing the afternoon fatigue that so many people experience. Another common improvement is better appetite control. Meals become more satisfying, and constant cravings begin to fade. This is not simply a matter of stronger discipline. As insulin sensitivity improves and appetite-regulating hormones become more balanced, the brain receives clearer signals about when the body truly needs food. Many people naturally reduce unnecessary snacking without consciously trying to eat less. Walking also supports healthier sleep. Regular physical activity helps synchronize the body's internal clock, making it easier to fall asleep and remain asleep throughout the night. Better sleep then improves hormone regulation, recovery, immune function, and metabolic health, creating another positive cycle. A good night's sleep often makes it easier to choose healthy foods and stay active the following day. Many people also notice that their clothes begin fitting differently before the scale shows a dramatic change. Waist circumference may decrease as visceral fat slowly shrinks, even if body weight changes only slightly. This is one reason health professionals often recommend measuring waist size in addition to tracking body weight. Body composition can improve long before large changes appear on the scale. However, many people unknowingly slow their own progress by making several common mistakes. The first mistake is expecting rapid results. Modern culture encourages the belief that visible transformation should happen within a week or two. But fat cell reprogramming is a biological adaptation, not an overnight event. The body needs repeated signals before it changes long-term behavior. The second mistake is overestimating calories burned during walking. After a walk, some people reward themselves with large snacks or sugary drinks, unintentionally replacing all of the energy they just used. Walking is incredibly valuable for metabolic health, but it cannot completely overcome consistently excessive calorie intake. The third mistake is walking inconsistently. Walking once or twice each week provides benefits, but the greatest metabolic improvements come from frequent repetition. Your muscles, liver, fat tissue, and cardiovascular system respond best when they receive regular signals rather than occasional bursts of activity. Another mistake is ignoring sleep and recovery. Even the best walking routine cannot fully compensate for chronic sleep deprivation. Poor sleep raises cortisol, increases hunger, reduces insulin sensitivity, and makes fat loss more difficult. Walking and quality sleep work together, not separately. Some people also believe they must walk as fast as possible every day. While occasional brisk walking can certainly improve cardiovascular fitness, constantly pushing maximum intensity is unnecessary for most people. Moderate, sustainable walking that can be maintained for months often produces better long-term metabolic adaptations than short periods of extreme effort followed by burnout. Finally, many people judge progress using only the bathroom scale. Body weight naturally fluctuates because of water balance, glycogen storage, digestion, and many other factors. Meanwhile, important improvements may already be occurring inside the body. Blood sugar may be more stable. Blood pressure may be lower. Muscles may be storing more glycogen. Fat cells may already be more responsive to hormonal signals. These changes matter even before dramatic weight loss becomes visible. The people who experience the greatest long-term success usually focus on consistency rather than perfection. They understand that every walk reinforces healthy biological signals. Missing one day is not failure. The goal is to create a pattern that your body can recognize and adapt to over weeks, months, and years. So what does the ideal walking routine actually look like? How can you apply everything you've learned in a practical way that fits into everyday life, while giving your fat cells the strongest possible signals to become healthier? That's exactly what we'll cover next. By now, it's clear that walking is far more than a simple form of exercise. It is one of the most accessible ways to communicate with your body's metabolic system every single day. The good news is that you do not need expensive equipment, complicated workout plans, or hours in the gym to begin changing how your fat cells behave. What matters most is consistency, not perfection. If you're just getting started, aim for approximately 30 to 45 minutes of walking on most days of the week. The pace should be brisk enough that you can still hold a conversation but feel that your breathing is slightly elevated. This moderate intensity provides enough stimulus to activate your muscles, improve circulation, and encourage metabolic adaptation without placing excessive stress on your joints or nervous system. If walking for 30 minutes at once feels difficult, break it into shorter sessions. 3 10-minute walks spread throughout the day can still provide meaningful metabolic benefits, especially when performed after meals. Walking after eating helps muscles absorb glucose more efficiently, reducing the size of blood sugar spikes and decreasing the amount of insulin your body needs to release. Over time, these repeated improvements contribute to healthier fat cells and better overall metabolic flexibility. Morning walks can also be an excellent option for many people. Exposure to natural daylight helps regulate your circadian rhythm, improves alertness, and may support healthier sleep later that night. For some individuals, walking before breakfast may increase fat oxidation during the activity itself. However, this does not mean everyone must walk on an empty stomach. The best walking routine is the one you can maintain consistently for months rather than days. To maximize results, combine walking with a few simple lifestyle habits. Eat enough high-quality protein to support muscle maintenance. Include fiber-rich vegetables, fruits, legumes, and whole grains to help stabilize blood sugar. Stay well hydrated throughout the day. Prioritize 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep whenever possible. If your schedule allows, add 2 sessions of resistance training each week to preserve lean muscle mass, which further improves insulin sensitivity and resting metabolic health. Remember that your goal is not simply to burn calories during today's walk. Your goal is to teach your body to become better at using energy every day. Every consistent walk reinforces healthier communication between your muscles, liver, pancreas, brain, blood vessels, and fat tissue. Over time, these repeated signals help transform your metabolism from one that constantly stores excess energy into one that becomes increasingly efficient at accessing and using stored fat when needed. Let's quickly review what we've learned. During the first 30 days of regular walking, your muscles become more sensitive to insulin and more efficient at absorbing glucose. Your liver stores less excess fat and regulates blood sugar more effectively. Your mitochondria become stronger, allowing your cells to produce energy more efficiently. Chronic inflammation gradually decreases. Blood vessels become healthier, improving circulation throughout the body. Appetite-regulating hormones begin working more effectively, reducing unnecessary cravings. Most importantly, your fat cells become more metabolically flexible. Instead of stubbornly holding on to stored energy, they become increasingly willing to release it when your body needs fuel. None of these changes happen overnight. They are the result of hundreds of thousands of individual steps, repeated consistently over time. That is the true power of walking. It is not a quick fix. It is a biological training program that teaches your body how to function more efficiently from the inside out. So the next time you head out for a walk, remember that you're doing much more than burning a few calories. You're sending a message to every major organ in your body. You're strengthening your metabolism one step at a time. And with every walk, you're giving your fat cells another reason to become healthier than they were yesterday. If you enjoyed this science-based explanation and want to learn more about walking, fasting, visceral fat, blood sugar, metabolism, and healthy aging, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. And before you go, tell us in the comments, how many days have you been walking consistently? And what positive changes have you noticed in your own body? Your experience might inspire someone else to take their very first step today.